Yes, sir. Everybody, we can go ahead and get started.
I'm ready.
John, I'll start. Seems like you guys have known that Michael Thomas needed surgery for a while, but can you just talk about your expectations for him and the state of the receiver position if you have to spend some time without him?
Well, look, it appears we're going to have to spend some time without him. It's disappointing, and we'll work through it with the other players that are here. But the surgery took place, and obviously, we would have liked that to have happened earlier than later. And quite honestly, it should have.
Can you explain? I mean, was there a lack of communication in between, or?
Nope. I'm going to leave it at that.
And I noticed you guys haven't added a lot at the receiver position. There's a report that you added Chris Hogan. I don't know if you can confirm that or not, but are you comfortable with the current depth that you have, or do you think that's a position you'll continue to look to add to?
Yeah, look, the guys we have, we think we've got a number of guys that have played quite a bit. We'll always pay close attention to the roster, and kind of go from there. But yeah, I couldn't say today that all of a sudden that's something. There's other pressing positions ahead of that position.
Want to list them? Do you mind identifying them?
Next question.
Okay.
Hey, Sean, with some of the protocols that the NFL's put out, do you think that'll have any effect on roster decisions as far as, vaccinated and unvaccinated players?
No, look, it is what it is. The difference, obviously, this year is we're split now, be it a small number, but from a team standpoint, we've got a high amount of players that are vaccinated, and yet we have a number of players that aren't. And you kind of go based on the protocols that they give you.
Sean, what was the attraction to Brian Poole? What were the things you guys liked about him?
About who?
Brian Poole.
I'm sorry. Yeah, look, we're familiar with him. I just saw him in the cafeteria, and he's a guy that, look, he's a good competitor. He's tough. I think he's a really good tackler, and he's played at a high level on some pretty good teams.
Hey, Sean, maybe if you could just walk us through, because we haven't really had to ask this question in a while, the evaluation process at quarterback, reps with the first team versus the second team, practice versus preseason games.
Yeah.
Again, It's just something we haven't had to ask you about in a long time.
No, I know. And it's kind of been enjoyable. I think, look, both those guys are going to compete in camp. We're going to do our best to give them every bit the opportunity to be our starter. I'm not going to lay out a timeline relative to the snaps they're getting or any of that. Just that they both have had a good off season. Both of them are, I think, very well respected in the locker room for not only their skill set on the field, but also their leadership and work ethic off the field. So we'll go from there.
Sean, when you're looking at quarterbacks you want to work with and develop, are there any specific traits that a guy has to have? And are there any traits that a quarterback can't fix? Like, is there anything that's a major red flag?
Well, there's a certain skill set physically and mentally. I think both of those areas. There's a number of things that you would look at that you have to see. You have to see a player that processes. You have to see a player that's a good worker. You have to see a player that has got arm talent. There's certain things to play at this level that you look for, and we feel like obviously both of our guys that we've worked with already are guys that have those traits.
Sean, along those lines, you mentioned leadership, work ethic. I know you can grade and evaluate what happens in practice and in a preseason game, but how much does that go into your evaluation? Just the intangible stuff?
Yeah, all of it does. I mean, everything that we begin seeing, all of that factors in.
Sean, do you install the exact same offensive plays depending on the quarterback that's in, or are there some variations even in the first couple weeks of training camp based on the quarterback?
Yeah, look, it's a fair question, Mike. I think it bends a little bit, and our job is to give them opportunities to do things that they are comfortable with and that they do well. That becomes a little bit of the uniqueness in this offseason, but nothing that we can't overcome.
Yeah, I mean, is that plan though honestly different than any of your 16 previous training camps where you sort of have different installations for the personnel at quarterback?
Well, I've only had 14 prior training camps.
True. Oh, sorry.
Not 16, but yeah, it's different. Obviously, it's the first training camp we go into without Drew, who has been a starter here. So sure, it's going to be different.
Kind of along those lines.
Vaccination rates were somewhere around the 90% mark among players. Would you say you're happy with how your team has responded to getting the vaccine and doing what they have to do?
Yeah, I don't know if happy is the word. I still struggle with the balance of, an overall understanding of where we're trying to get to. And, but clearly, there are other teams that are behind where we're at. And hopefully we can get to that 100% mark.
Coach, can you talk about the signing of Chris Hogan, and certainly unique background with him and coming to this team?
Yeah, look, again, another player that, we've seen and actually practiced against someone that we think is, got a lot of the skill sets we look for. So we're excited to have him.
Sean, I think this is the first time we've talked to you since then, but how important was it to get Ramczyk locked up for a couple of years, and then beyond that, just to give you guys a little flexibility to add to this year's team with against Cap?
Yeah, look, he's been tremendously consistent. He's been available, and one of the better right tackles in football, and I'm glad he's on our team, and he's certainly deserving of the contract that he got. Yeah, that was one of those that we looked at closely. I mean, that was a must for us. He's too good a player.
John, did you want to get a workout in with the Jaguars? I know you've gotten a lot out of that in the past with other teams. It just couldn't get it worked out.
Yeah, I think right now with the way our schedule sets up, that we're gonna stick with just practicing here.
Sean, in general, what are some things you might stress to some of the younger players in their growth going into training camp?
In general, look, it's hot, all the details relative to being available, understanding the culture and very quickly understanding the importance of each practice, taking care of their lower body. I mean, there's a lot of things. We'll be smart about being outside and then being inside with the weather. I know we're going to have some heat here in the first 3 or 4 days. So, we'll be smart about that.
Hey, Sean, obviously it's a free country and people can do what they want, but you're educating your players on the vaccine. Do you have a message for the fans knowing how important a full stadium is in the expectation of having that? And just, again, is there a message you would want to convey to the fans maybe watching?
I'm focused on a camp, not a PSA right now. I appreciate the question. And you want people to be educated and understand, where we're trying to get to. And I'm just one of those guys that prefers to look at the science as opposed to some other things, but mainly focused just on this team and in the locker room now. Obviously, we want to play in front of our fans. That's a huge advantage for us. If you just paid attention to the Stanley Cup finals, you had one team with great success winning the cup and with a tremendous fan base down in Tampa, and then their opponent, didn't have that same advantage, but those guys in Tampa did a great job, and I think it means a lot. I think it means a lot to your players.
Sean, how do you guys think you stand right now at cornerback? Obviously, there's an open job for a starting job. How do you feel like that position group, you feel about it going into camp?
Yeah, there's still an area there. There's still a position there. There's still a player there that we need to find. We'll continue looking and looking at everyone that we think might be a candidate to fill that must.
Coach, first off, congrats on the wedding, because I don't think I've talked to you since then. But would you be willing to identify any players in particular that you've been impressed with or seen improvement already on in just the start of camp opening back up?
Well, we just had a conditioning test today, so we're probably a little bit early with that question. And thank you for the congrats, but our first practice will be tomorrow.
Sean, just to follow up that question, I assume that means that Brian Poole, who's spent a lot of his career in the slot, that's still the vision you have for him, is in the slot, so it would be an outside cornerback that remains, or are there plans to move somebody to the outside?
No, we'll see, Mike, where that's at. Brian certainly has been a slot player in a position that he excelled at. So, I think it's important to narrow that focus down to an outside player. Are you guys still on?
It's like we're good. Thank you.
Thanks, Coach.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Sean.